Are you looking for a way to scale your short-term rental business and buy more properties? Well, co-hosting might be the right fit for you. Welcome to the Co-Host Coach podcast with Joe Roney. This episode of the Co-Host Coach is brought to you by Savvy STR Agents. If you're looking to buy a short-term rental, then contact the STR Savvy Agent team at savvy.realty.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Co-Host Coach. I am Joe Roney, and I am super excited to have a fellow Savvy STR agent, the queen of the Redneck Riviera down in Gulf Shores. So Ashley Guy, welcome, and thank you for joining me.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to share with you about Gulf Shores and how we run the co-host business down here and some opportunities for everyone else.
It's awesome. So, I like to tell people that, you and I have never met in person, but we are like partners because our areas that we cover pretty much butt up to each other. So, we traded, had the one client that we kind of traded, showed houses to the same day. And I know there's going to be more of that to come.
Yes, it's really interesting that we're neighbors, but it feels like we're worlds apart at the same time, just because there's this imaginary border, and then it switches to your territory.
Yep. So I did recently steal Bill Faith from the Gulf Shores area because he is under contract to buy a condo in Panama City Beach, coming to the dark side on our end. So
That's amazing. Congratulations.
yeah. But anyway, so super excited to have you on. You have obviously been crushing, the Gulf Coast down there for quite a while. So what got you into short-term rentals initially, and when did you get your first one?
I started investing in short-term rentals in 2020. I had looked at long-term rentals for several years, and I just was not excited about the returns for the amount of money I needed to invest. And it was one conversation that someone said, "Hey, you should go buy a cabin in the woods." And I was like, who the heck goes to a cabin in the woods? I'm not a mountain person. So I didn't understand that concept, but I did a lot of research very quickly. And we were in contract 2 weeks from that one conversation, because
Wow.
that showed what I was looking for in a real estate investment. And we had a goal to have one property for each child that we have. And that can be kind of our legacy thing, that generational wealth that we want to pass down. And that was the first goal. So we started in 2020, December of 2020, and today we have 11 properties. So we hit that goal pretty quickly. We diversified across 5 different states, have since learned some things, and we're in 3 states currently: Tennessee, Georgia, and Alabama.
Awesome. So, so the first one was in the Tennessee mountains, I'm assuming.
Yes.
And is this the unique property that I've seen? Was that your first one there?
No.
Okay. All right. So you dove in one, and for everyone, Ashley doesn't have 11 kids, but you do have a few. So how many little
uh,
ones do you have now?
I have 6 kids. So I bought the first one 2 weeks after my 5th child was born. So I went through the whole process like mega prego. And that was during that process, I kind of realized that showing up to some of these calls when there wasn't a whole lot of people in it in 2020, and I was super pregnant and I was the only female there. And so that's where I kind of took on the name of the Femme investor and hope to empower other women to learn about real estate investing and just continue to be transparent during our entire process of buying the first one, second one, and so on. Ups and downs. We just went through hell week. So that's the whole goal for me, is to provide transparency on this type of investing. And, it can be incredibly lucrative. It can be incredibly frustrating. But I had a moment I'll share with you couple days ago where the stress of everything just kind of got to me, and I was driving around checking on properties, and I saw a family walking out of a house that we own, and they were hanging out on the porch, and I knew they were talking to a couple of people at the pool. And it was one of those moments where it was like, Man, growing up, I remember going to the beach with my family, and we still talk about Nancy's place in Holden Beach, and people are going to talk about my place for the
Yep.
rest of their life. And that, the ability to create magical moments through owning real estate and co-hosting, like that is priceless. And that's one of my favorite things that people kind of get lost in the translation is that's the power we have as co-hosts and as owners to just create memories. And that's so cool. Might be the best job in the world.
Nope. I love that, and I wholeheartedly agree. And it's funny that you mentioned Hell Week because we're obviously in spring break in the coast, and I had my mastermind call this morning with my team, and we were talking about some of the ups and downs that we've gone over the last couple of weeks. So I'm assuming that's a little bit of what you're talking about on Hell Week.
Oh, I had bleach on carpets this week.
Oh boy.
And yeah, that was the first for me. They got red nail polish on carpets and then decided to use bleach to try and get it off. So yeah,
Yes.
it was that among many things created for a very eventful week.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So you own 11 properties total, and
mhm.
what decide made you decide to get into co-hosting? When did you decide to do that?
That was not something that we set out to pursue. It came to us very organically. We have what we call here in Gulf Shores cottages, which are like cookie cutter identical houses, and they're in kind of like a little neighborhood. And so we own three in there. And one of our neighbors approached us and said, "Hey, you're getting higher rates than us. We see the clientele that you're getting is better. You have higher occupancy. Can you do that for us?" And at the time, they were using a kind of a big box name. And that was really, we were nervous. We were interested. We were excited. It was great that somebody else saw that from afar when we didn't even know people were looking. And that was when we took a chance on this opportunity and said yes. And then now we have 10 cottages in that community, but we have 25 properties that we co-host with currently.
Wow.
So it's grown all organically, referrals, as I'm sure you know, when you do it well, and you make sure that somebody's property is maintained and they're getting great rates and occupancy, they're just going to tell their friends. And
Yep.
so that was 2 summers ago. So we've just been doing this not quite 2 years yet.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. Similar to how I got into it is a little organically. Had a friend of mine that had me co-host his cabin. It's something that I did pursue and I want to do, but now after doing it for a couple of years, it's the same thing. People call all the time, and I turned down more properties this past year than I've ever even imagined turning down because it has to fit our niche. So do you have a certain niche that you're looking for or looking to grow your co-hosting business? Or are you pretty satisfied where you're at right now?
I'm satisfied with where we're at. We do have a few more that we're taking on. We'll be onboarding two more in the next week. And it's something where after this season, we're going to probably adjust our portfolio a little bit to narrow down our niche a bit. Condos aren't really my thing.
Yep.
So, and we only have a few of them, but then they turn great. They've got high occupancy, but it's just not quite the revenue. I can't drive the revenue from a one bedroom that I can from a three-bedroom house. So
Yep.
we'll be making some adjustments there. But especially this year, I've been a lot more vocal about what I need done, what I want to work with, who I want to work with, and subpar properties are just not going to cut it anymore. And so I make a very clear property improvement plan from the get go and say, this is what I need. And if you are not okay with this, then we're just not going to be a good fit because I'm not taking something on just to be average.
Yep.
And I think you're probably in the same boat that
Yep.
average is just average. And I'm not average, neither are you. So
Yeah.
we want to be at the top of our markets because that's what we can do best.
And I think that we're seeing that throughout the co-hosting space. Not everybody, because not every co-host is created equally, but there's so many like us that just want to take on great properties. And it doesn't have to be a great property today, but if I can work with an owner that's willing to invest and let us upgrade and take that property to be a super property, as people call it, I'm okay with that. I'm willing to put in the work and bring in some people and get the job done. We're in the middle of a property now that I just did a wood plank ceiling for a client. I've never done a wood plank ceiling in my life, but it wasn't hard. But we're trying to make this property, a really awesome property, and we have an owner that's willing to invest. So I love that that's what you're doing as well. And I agree. At the end of each season, you have to look at your portfolio and decide what's best for your business as you move forward. Because there are some owners that just, it is a bad term, but they deserve the big box property managers, you know? So maybe that's a bad way of putting it, but there's some owners that just deserve that because they don't, they just want to set it, forget it, and they don't care.
If you're just getting started, one of the things that I would recommend is having a really diverse portfolio. That helped us learn the market really well because we were like, well, we're curious what this size occupancy in this building or in this location can perform like. I want to get my hands on that and see how far I can stretch that.
Yep.
And so that's just been kind of the learning process that we were in once we started getting out of the like 3 and 4 bedroom houses. And so that's really fun and exciting. So sometimes as a newer co-host, you just take what you can get
Oh yeah.
and that's your market research. So you can just really understand what you want moving forward or where boundaries can push. We hit numbers that I would have never guessed and nobody would have guessed was possible.
Yep.
It was just because we took a chance on some properties that were underperforming.
Yeah.
The ugly ones are like my favorite. If you let me make them pretty, I'll show you what they can perform like. So that's also kind of on the flip side of co-hosting. Not only do you create magical moments for those guests, but man, you make them for the owners too, because they're like, I know it can do well, but it's not doing it yet. And you're like, yeah, have you looked at it? That's why it's not doing it yet. So
Yep.
let's get hands on it and let's do the property justice. And that makes me feel really good where I'm like, this property deserves love. It can perform at X amount and it's just not there because no one's loving on it. So let's do that and actually, show what it can do.
Yeah.
That's fun.
How hands-on do you allow owners to be when you're making, design changes and stuff like that? Are you kind of trust me, I got this, or are you creating design boards and getting approval on stuff like that?
I prefer to get approval. Even if they say like, I don't know, that's your thing, I still like to just second, I might say, hey, here's 2 options of paint colors. They're both navies, but they look a little different. Which one do you like or something like that?
Yeah.
But I very much am honest about my opinion. I think that's one of the biggest things that you have to be as a co-host to the owners is honesty. I just took over a duplex that's 4 bedrooms, basically 5. It's got a separate bunk area. And one of my friends was co hosting it previously. And this 4 bedroom with a heated pool, a hot tub, a kiddie pool, a dock out to a pier was doing like less than 40,000 for the year.
Wow.
And I'm like, what? Wait a minute. Like, what? I don't understand. And when I took it over, I just gave the owner this massive list of like, here's everything wrong with it.
Yeah.
Just from like a bare minimum maintenance, safety, wasn't even design, had nothing to do with design, was just actual guest experience stuff. And she was like, I've never heard of any of this stuff. And I was like, it's because no one was honest with you.
Yeah.
And she fixed everything right away, was absolutely mortified. She was like, I would never stay in that because she hadn't been there in like 8 months. And so she had no clue of its current condition. And honesty, I think, was what won me that. It's hard to hear. It's hard to hear when you're the co-host and you're on the other side and someone is underperforming, they're bleeding, that owner's distressed and they need help. And for you to say, hey, I need you to invest a lot of money into this is hard, but you need to do that kindly and just understand, that this is going to get you to why, to that point, to where we want to be. It's the only way to get there, truly. But they need someone who can be kind and honest. And I think there's some co-hosts out there that probably needed to hear this conversation and remind you, you have to be honest about all of these things. You can't be successful in business without being honest.
And this is also the reason, and you talked earlier about going and doing property visits, also the reason to have a hands-on co-host that's going to visit your properties. There's so many people, in my co-host coach thing, I've had a lot of people that call me and say, "Hey, I want you to teach me how to be a co-host." And I'm like, "Okay, where do you live?" And they're like, in Africa or something, or they're in another country. They're like, "I can manage properties in your area." I'm like, "No, you can't actually." And my other thing that I require is they have to own short-term rentals if I'm going to teach them how to co-host, because if you don't own, you don't truly understand this business. It's hard to truly grasp unless you're behind the scenes paying the bills, and you own 11 of them. So obviously the behind the scenes of what that looks like. And I love how you're able to help these investors. I mean, that's really awesome. So
If I ever want to win a co-host conversation of like, hey, well, we're between you and so and so, and I know that there's some good ones around here. I'm like, well, just ask them where they live,
yeah,
because
yep,
if they're not local,
yep,
how the thing that I think always wins my conversations is I'll say, well, ask whoever how many times they're going to be in your unit over the next week,
yep,
because I'm incredibly hands on. I
yep,
can't be ahead of the problems if I don't know what the problems are.
yep,
And so that's kind of, my conversation where I'm just like, where do they live and how many times are they going to be there? Because
yep.
you can't do it properly if you're not hands on.
Yep, yep. So in my contract, in there a minimum quarterly personal walkthrough, but I'm in my properties every month, and I live 12 hours away from my properties, but because I'm also a realtor in the Panhandle, I am there. Well, I was there last week. I'm flying there next week, and I'm there about every other week year round now, until we move there permanently. But I agree with you. Having a co-host that can visit your properties and see them in person and can follow up behind the cleaning team and the maintenance team. And there's things that I do in helping my, on handyman type stuff that I'm not even charging for. I go into a property and I'm like, oh, I need to fix this, this, and this. I'm not having to hire a handyman every single time there's something needed, and nickel and diming the owners too. So that's some of the advantages there. So you're co-hosting. You own 11. You co-host 25.
Mhm.
So that's a handful. I know your husband's involved in this as well. So, and similar to my wife and I, you guys do this as a team. So, what does that look like between the two of you? Because I think that's really important for people to understand that you can't do this alone.
It's incredibly challenging. We also run a cleaning company with 35 units that we clean for short term rentals. So we are involved in every single process that property is going to go through. I'm really great at the people side, and Jared's really great at the tech side. So a lot of times we'll split guest communication if need be. If there is a problem, I love to go there personally because it's really great when you can yell at a screen and you're yelling at somebody on the other side,
Yeah.
but you don't treat people in person that same way. So I'm the person that will go, and I had a guest flustered yesterday. So I showed up with crumble cookies and diffused the situation instantly. And it's like that seems to go really great. So I'm a great communicator, problem solver. That's kind of my role, and also the client acquisition from the co host perspective. I tend to be the name and the face of our company. And being the people person, I think people like me more than my husband.
Yeah.
So he is a lot more of the tech side. He's doing a lot of the back office. He's definitely the person in charge of revenue management. I don't step into that lane, but he also will do the handyman work or hire those out. He's overseeing the maintenance side as well. And that's kind of, we try and stay in our lanes.
Yep.
But I'll also tell you, I think it is the most challenging thing to work with a spouse. And y'all have to be great at communicating and really defining roles.
Yep.
That can be really confusing, but also making sure you have enough help so that you can turn it off for a little bit. You feel like as a co-host, you're on 24/7. You can't put your phone down. And so you want to make sure you have enough support as you grow so that you can step away, because those roles of being business partners doesn't come before your actual partner, husband,
Yep.
wife, whatever spouse is, all of that stuff. So I think it's just something important for everyone to hear.
Yep. Yep. You have any virtual assistants that help you in this business?
Just some marketing ones. We don't have communication currently.
Yeah, that's how I am as well. I haven't just can't take away that communication. I mean, And I love it. I love the guest communication. I love when a guest is having a great experience and they're telling me about it. Or, similar to what you said, I was in Panama City Beach last week and I had a guest that checked in and had a couple minor problems. I'm like, you know what? I am 5 minutes away. I'll be right there. They're like, well, actually, it's really not a big deal. We're fine. I'm like, well, no, I'm literally seriously, I'm 5 minutes away. I'm gonna get in my truck. I'll be right there. And I ended up not even having to go to the house, and that problem turned into a 5-star review because they were happy after that. So sometimes people have problems that aren't even problems. So, it happens
Yes,
often. I know, shifting gears a little bit on the co-hosting space and, everybody talks about the legalities of co-hosting, talks about, needing certain management, certain, do you need a broker's license? Do you not? There's big property managers. I've been saying this for a couple of years. There's going to be big property managers that are going to try to come down on co-host down the road because they're going to start to lose more and more business. So have you seen any of that in your market where the bigger property managers are starting to feel a little bit threatened?
absolutely. I have a huge target on my back, and I'm okay with that. And I keep taking, from the number one people. I'm like, well, if you were number one, then they would be satisfied with you. So here in Alabama, to property manage, you do need a broker's license. And, the Alabama Real Estate Commission is differentiating currently the difference between co-host and then full service property management. But one of the things that as a co-host in Alabama, you want to kind of keep your eye on is if you are promoting yourself out there in publicly into groups and stuff, that they will come at you hard here. They do not want you to take their business. They want to make sure that it's illegal to take people's money and whatever. They don't understand how it works. But I will tell you the component in Alabama that seems to be catching attention is the marketing side. It has nothing to do with money. That marketing is one of the three main portions of property management that the Alabama looks at, and so kind of have to be careful about how you're marketing something. They even came at me for a property that I own with my dad, which was really funny. They were like, "You don't own that." I'm like, "Look at the deed. My name's on there."
Yeah.
So that it's just kind of interesting that how threatened they feel.
Yep.
But we also recently took over a property from a big PM sold it to a smaller PM because it was underperforming. Okay, well, if you're getting rid of it anyway, I don't know why it's a big deal.
Yeah.
But, the owners did not appreciate being told that they were in the bottom 30% of the company, that they were being sold to someone else, and all of these things. And so there's a lot of changes going on. We've had Vacasa buy out several small companies that were really reputable.
hmm
But that's caused a lot of chaos here because everybody knows Vacasa is
Yeah.
not who you want to stay with.
Yes.
And then now there's a really high turnover right now in this area simply because we are seeing people grow too fast. We're seeing all these buyouts, and then the cost is now going to change and all these things. So
Yep.
we're seeing a lot of turnover, and it's a great time to be a co-host in this area, to be able to provide the service that people actually need, but
Yep.
also to elevate the level of hospitality that the guest deserves.
Yeah. And I think that's awesome. I mean, we as co-hosts, I think, are making a huge impact in the entire vacation rental community. We're providing better experiences. We're providing better places to stay. We care. I mean, it's just there's so many wins in the co-hosting space. The corporate world is not going to understand that, right? The big Vacases of the world, or the legislators who are creating laws. They're not looking at that side of it. They're just looking at very black and white. And I agree. The marketing piece, it specifically also says the same thing in Florida law. You collect money and you're not supposed to market unless you have a broker's license. I'm actually going to get my broker's license this fall. Is on my list to do by the end of this year. I already have my broker's license in Missouri. So I co-host down in Branson, and I'm going to be adding that this year because, and I tell this to everyone that I talk to, get it. Like go get your real estate and broker's license and still operating the co-host model. I prefer the co-host model than having to deal with trust accounting. So I will continue to do that even when I have my broker's license, but then I won't have any issues down the road if anyone comes down. Is that something you're considering?
Yes. So I'm newer to real estate, so I haven't hit my 2 years yet.
Okay.
And so as soon as that hits this summer, so it's on my August to-do list, get
Yep.
my broker's license.
I just
And
said,
that was the plan anyway,
yeah.
before I got into property management. But now it's just made that even more definitive just to have,
Yep.
you know,
Yep. I
it
hit my
right.
2 years last month for Florida, and we're so busy right now. I couldn't even imagine trying to do that. So I'll do it when the slow season gets here at the end of summer. We'll get through. I might actually do it this summer because, believe it or not, summer is busy season for property management, but for real estate side, it's a little bit slower because we're not probably not going to be doing as much then. So shifting gears one more time, we got a few minutes left. Obviously, you joined Savvy a little bit before me. I didn't get to meet you at our Savvy Summit because you had some other stuff going on. So hopefully we'll get to meet in person soon. But before you even joined Savvy, you had already started to make a name for yourself as the STR agent in Gulf Shores. So tell me a little about that and what your clientele is looking like and the type of homes you're able to find. What kind of deals are you finding?
When I started into real estate, the number one reason I wanted to do that was to serve the STR investor population. Being on the buyer side so many times, that was something where I felt like there were some shortcomings from a lack of education of other realtors that I had worked with, um, to lack of communication. I kind of felt like a number sometimes, and I was sold some things that maybe they thought was possible, but didn't have the data to back it up. I'm not sure. So there were
Yep.
just some transactions that I wouldn't want someone else to have in the future. And so if I can kind of help prevent that and treat people like I want to be treated, that's the entire goal. And it's, really just to give back to what STRs have done for me. And that was how I got started. I was nervous about being new to the area because we had just moved to Gulf Shores. So it's not like I had a established SOI. Was just like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm new here. This is what I know. But without a doubt, I know this better than anybody else in this area. And to compete with other agents that work in the STR space here, I always tell people just look at our portfolios.
Yep.
Who has them and who doesn't? They can sell you them all day, but do they know anything about it firsthand?
Yep.
So that is kind of how I got, started. But I primarily use TikTok as my social channel to get information out. I started that well before I became an agent, just giving free information because I truly think a lot of what you can learn can just be for free.
Yep.
And we've all learned through other people's mistakes or our own. And so why not share those in order to better serve someone else? So I entirely only work with the short-term rental investor population here. I know that so well. I love that. My favorite thing is probably first-time investors because it's terrifying. And I remember that so vividly. And like, you're like, is this the best or worst decision? I have no idea.
Yeah.
But I want to be there and hold their hand. And then I really follow through with my clients. So part of what they do with me is I'm going to help them. Literally, we Zoom together and we set up your listing, we set up your pricing, we set up your messaging, we set up your cleaner coordination. As long, if they're self-managing, I want to help them because I had to trailblaze that my path.
Yeah.
That was hard. And if I can help them just a little bit along the way and make less mistakes and have a better experience, that's going to help them in the short term and in the long term.
Yep. No, I agree. I agree, and I do the same thing. I think the majority of the savvy agents do that, and I think that's one of the things that sets us apart from other agents in the area. And we all own in our markets. We all mostly manage in our markets or self manage. And what you're doing down in Gulf Shores is absolutely amazing. Your numbers are off the charts in every single category. I mean, we're talking 5 years. You started this in 2020. So here we are in 25. So you're not even to the 5 year mark, and short term rentals has completely transformed your life.
100%. And what's really interesting about that is it has pivoted how I look at life as a whole differently.
Yep.
When you take a step outside of the box, sometimes you can see what the box looks like. And then maybe you're like, maybe I don't want to be in the box anymore. And so break the damn box. It's okay. It's okay if you're doing something different. And this is your first, you're considering an investment or to grow then a co-host business, all of this. Like, that's scary, and you might feel alone because there's not that many of us doing life this different.
Yep.
But it's completely freeing when you get to design a life around your terms. And I think everyone should be committed to that.
Yeah. No, I think that's really, really freaking awesome. And excited to be on the team with you. Excited to get to know you more as this journey continues, and hopefully we'll get to meet in person pretty soon. But so tell everyone, if they wanted to get in touch with you, what is the best way to get in touch with you if they're looking at either buying a short-term rental in the Gulf Shores area, or if they're looking for a co-host?
Absolutely. So I'm the Femme Investor, FEMME, on TikTok, Instagram, and on Facebook too. Also YouTube. I'm on all the places. But really, more than anything, I just want to continue to be a resource for anyone out there that needs guidance. So feel free to reach out. You're never bothering me. This is how you learn, is from someone else who's in the space. And so please have a seat at the table with me. I'd love to help you in any capacity. Ashley Cohen Guy on social, or the Femme Investor.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining, and can't wait to see this one air. There are going to be a lot of investors out there listening to this one, and you gave them a whole bunch of nuggets to learn. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Ashley. And until next time, everyone, thanks for joining the Co-Host Coach. We'll see you next week.